had some type of ancestral worship involved in both their religious and their cultural activities. Ancestor veneration assists the living in remembering the responsibility of the elders. When we look at certain ancient cultures, part of the veneration done when they go to the grave site or when they have something in the temple or in their home, it brings and ties the family together. In many of the Asian and African cultures, the individual that has transitioned is still considered the head of the family, and the next in line are those that are the living. But again, the purpose is to keep balance and order in the family and the community. This is why the veneration takes place. It's not just a spiritual event, but it transcends or transfers over into the physical realm. Amen? So we talked a little bit about Cambodia on yesterday. China also has ancestor veneration. I'm just going to go through a few because there's so many. But just as a spoiler alert, again, all the cultures will have something in common. And there's going to be incense burning, there's going to be candles, there's going to be a meal or some form of offering, generally in the form of food. Sometimes, in most instances, it will be fruit. Other instances, it will be meat. Some cultures, the ancestors eat first. Father Anderson, how in the world is the ancestor going to eat and they're no longer in the physical plane? What they believe is that ancestor shows up as a bird. And the bird comes and plucks and eats. If you lay something down, a bird going to come and eat it. So what they do is when the bird comes to eat, right, they don't have to finish the whole meal, but the bird samples it. Afterwards, then the family can eat. Because again, there's that transfer, there's that spirit being revealed in some kind of fleshly manner. Okay? So in China, ancestor veneration or worship seek to honor and recollect the actions of the deceased. They represent the ultimate homage to the dead. The importance of paying respect to parents and elders lies with the fact that all physical bodily aspects of one's being were created by one's parents, who continued to tend to one's well-being until one was on firm footing. The respect and homage to parents is to return to the gracious deed to them in life and after. So you see there's that connection. You honor the ancestors, and in doing so, you also honor the parents that are still living. There's that continuum, that continuation. In India, ancestors are widely revered, honored, and venerated in India and culture. Amongst the Hindu, the Sikh ancestors may be worshipped as Gamadavyat, or village deity, or clan deity, such as the Jahat, or also the Dunk people. The spirit of the dead person is called Pitrus, which is venerated. When a person dies, the family observes a 13-day mourning period, generally called Sardura. A year hence, they observe the ritual of Trapan, in which the family makes offerings to the deceased. During these rituals, the family prepares food items for that deceased and offers it to the deceased. The offered food, the crows come and eat, and there's that showing of that, right? I mentioned that a minute ago. Then afterwards, the rest of the family goes on to join. But again, with the Hindu in India, there's that understanding, there's a continuation. The Assam or Aram religion is based on ancestor worship. The Aram believe that a man after his death remains an ancestor only for a few days and soon becomes Fa, or God. They also believe that the soul of a man, which is immortal, unites with the supreme soul, possesses the qualities of a spiritual being, and always blesses the family. So every Aham family, in order to worship the dead, established a pillar on the opposite side of the kitchen, which is called Dumka, where they worship the dead with various offerings like homemade wine, rice, and a variety of meat and fish. A ritual centered in commemorating the dead is celebrated by the Aham people on the 31st of January every year in memory of the departed. It is a manifestation of the concept of ancestor worship that the Aham share with other peoples originating from the Tai Shak stock. It is a festival to show respect to the departed ancestors and remember their contributions to society. On the day of Midam, Mi-Fi worship is offered only to Dekafi and the Dam Shafa because they are regarded as the gods of heaven. Now, for those of you that stayed and there's a preceding class, there was Bible 101 that goes way past Bible 101, but you see the similarities, you see the thought process that in 1 John chapter 3, when it talks about what we shall be, I'm paraphrasing, but what it says is that what we shall become is not yet known, but when it is, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. Okay, there's that leaving of the body, and now in the spirit realm, you see, oh, this is what it is. You become like you're joined back with God. That concept is not just Christian, because right now we're talking about an Indian people, East Indian folks. These concepts are ancient. The text, you'll find things in the Bible that you will find in other religions. So if you come in tonight at 7 and hear the comparative religions, you'll see that. Even in Islam, there is, most folks don't know because they don't talk about, Islam also deals with ancestral worship. Indonesia. In Indonesia, ancestor worship has been a tradition for some of the indigenous people, the Fodam and the Toba Batka. In Korea, the ancestor veneration is referred to by the generic term Jarai. Notable examples of Jarai include the Manamo, I can't pronounce these words, please forgive me. The ceremony held on the anniversary of the family's death member is called Shanta. The majority of Catholics, Buddhists, and non-believers practice ancestral rites, although Protestants do not. The Catholic ban on ancestral rituals was lifted in 1939 when the Catholic Church formally recognized ancestral rites as a civic practice. This is Korea I'm now talking about. So even the church said, look, we're not going to deny that. Why would the church say that? Because it has always practiced ancestral worship and veneration. Instead of using the term ancestors, the Catholic Church uses the term saints. But it's the same. The bottom line of all of this, and there's a few more cultures we'll talk about, but the bottom line of this is that it has always existed. And it exists for a reason. It has become anything that's a spiritual principle that you find around the world, it validates itself. The number one thing out of this is that this flesh is not all we are. It becomes new to the West. It becomes new to the Christian mindset because the major emphasis is not placed on ancestors. There's a small part, when you talk about the saints, there's a small part of what their role is. And yes, we know they're intercessors. But the major focus within Christianity doesn't deal with that. It's a part of. But again, my premise is that because when you understand your identity and you understand the connectivity, then you have an awareness of who you are, whose you are, and where you're headed and who you can become. We talked about that earlier in the previous class. These things keep coming up, and we mention and bring this to the attention of everyone in the African American Catholic congregation because it is a matter of telling the whole truth. For example, we're celebrating 400 years since the first enslaved Africans came to Virginia in 1619. And in the process of looking at that, one of the first things that took place when we got to these shores, even before, while on the ship, is you can no longer do what? Speak your language. You can no longer worship your gods. You can no longer be called by the name that your parents gave you. I'm going to give you a name. I'm going to give you a religion. And I'm going to give you the interpretation. You're not going to find out the interpretation for yourself. I'm going to tell you what this means. We talked about the misunderstanding and miscommunication about the curse of Ham. But if I keep telling you something's truth and I tell you long enough, you believe it. So if I tell you what you do is pagan and is evil, you're going to tell me that the rest of the world, the majority of the world practice is evil? Now, fundamentalists, and I'm not knocking them, it's just another thought process. They will tell you that. To my understanding, there's like 8 billion people on the planet now. So if 7 billion people have been doing something since there's been people, what does that tell you? As opposed to the Johnny-come-lately who's only been doing it for a short span of time, who seeks to control. Again, if you don't know who you are, in last night's class, which everything connects, Reverend Salih is teaching on the mission statement and how to inflesh that. And one of the things that came up, a gentleman last night said that one of the most important things that we have is our family name. He said some of the confusion that takes place now is because a lot of young people, both male and female, don't honor their family name. Because that kind of teaching has gone away in many instances. I will not say all, because there are some that are very proud and have an understanding of the importance of lineage. One of the points of ancestral worship is that it keeps lineage together. It's a spiritual and a cultural event. Religion and culture are only separated for those who want to control. The whole separation of state and church was on purpose. And it had everything to do with saying, forget about what the laws of God are. I'm telling you what the laws are. You can't bring that. You can't talk about morals. You know, interestingly, we talked about for a brief moment, we got into the whole thought process of suicide. We got into a brief thing about the death penalty. We're looking at abortion. Well, every spiritual system speaks on that. But if I don't want you to weigh in on that, if I don't want you to talk about that, I'm going to tell you, no, that's taboo. We're just going to deal with these laws that we created. There's not any one system, whether it is Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Sikh, Buddhist, Hindu, Akan, Yoruba, whatever the case may be, there is no one system that says it's okay to murder. And I'm making the distinction between the word murder and kill. For those of us that are carnivorous, those of us who eat meat or chicken or fish, you have to kill that animal. There's controversy about whether you can kill fruit and vegetables, so I won't go there today. But the difference is all of those systems say do not murder. In the 33 laws of Ma'at, which got condensed to the 10, and then Jesus condensed it to 2, the original text says, "Thou shalt not murder." Murder and kill are not necessarily the same thing. Murder is an intentional event. If you're protecting yourself and your family, someone may be killed. That's different than going out and intentionally taking someone's life because you want to take from them either property or some dead presidents or a piece of plastic after you force the pen out of them. But in any case, all of these systems are connected. And we talk about this connectivity so that we can rewire our thinking. I mentioned yesterday or today was the term purgatory or purgation. That's a period of time in which the spirit or soul cleanses itself before it returns to God. We talked about that last night. That is not exclusive to Christianity. The Chinese know about purgatory. The Hindu know about purgatory. The Muslim knows about purgatory. All these other indigenous religions talk about a period of time where if a soul still had some stain, it could purify itself before it can return to God. In Christianity and Catholicism, for those that were Roman Catholic, know that that period, well, babies go to limbo because whatever the doctrine of the church says. But nonetheless, purgatory was where you went if you were an adult, right? So you have that cleansing period. Well, so it is with systems that deal with ancestral veneration or worship. There's a place, if there was someone that was a little tainted, there's a place for you to go get purified. The reason that that was taken out, I believe, of the doctrine of the church, now when I say the church, Catholicism, is because I can't dangle hell over your head anymore. Ah, you're going to hell. You're just going to smack that. You're going to just bust it wide open, that behavior you got. But in fact, when you study the scripture, you don't find a whole lot of references to hell. You really don't. But that'll come from another class. I'm not teaching that one today. But the point is that there's information that has been withheld. And the reason that information gets withheld, and I know I'm being repetitive, but it's on purpose, it's so that you don't have a freedom that comes with knowing the truth. When I dangle something over your head, when God says, I don't want anyone to suffer, obviously I'm paraphrasing, but God says, I don't rejoice in the sinner's death. I would wish them to be able to reconcile. Many, we just learned, some of us learned a new word, that apakathesis, right? It is reconciliation back to the source. Well, I certainly can't tell y'all that that's the case, because I want you to feel sorrowful. And I want to hold that sinful state. Well, it's not, that's, if you have salvation and that sin was taken away, then how then are you, now you can, if the slate is wiped clean, then you have an opportunity, right? And there's the possibility not to miss the mark, and we turn that into something else. Still ties in because, again, there's that cleansing period that people who deal with ancestral worship, it comes out. In the Philippines, the indigenous religion of the pre-colonial Philippine, ancestor spirits were one of the two major types of spirits. Antito, whom with the shamans and communicate to ancestor spirits, were known as Yumgejed or guardian or caretakers. They can be the spirits of the actual ancestors or generalized guardian spirits of the family. Ancient Filipinos believe that upon death, the soul of a person travels usually by boat to the spirit world. Now, where else does the deceased travel by boat to the spirit realm? Anybody? Okay, well, the Vikings, you're correct. Who else? Because it predates that. Where else do the deceased, where does the soul, how does it get into the afterworld? Ancient Egypt. The pharaohs are in a boat to the afterlife. And since ancient Egypt or Kemet predates these other societies, see, it's not new. It's not new. It just doesn't get shared. The people on this planet have more in common than they do differences. We might light a red candle, somebody else light a white candle. But a candle's being lit because it represents light, and light represents the presence of God or the presence of spirit realm. Always. Light is pure. There can, yes, please. That was just for the royalty and their servants. And that's also mentioned here because, well, they were the first, but there are other cultures, Asian cultures, who also have their servants attend to them in the afterlife. There are some cultures that believe that the underworld or the afterlife is similar to the material world, except you don't die no more. So the same activities take place. So you take your servants with you so they can continue to serve. You bring your family. The whole thought process, again, is that once you step into the spiritual world, spiritual realm, that you encounter all of your loved ones again. Is that not what we believe about heaven? That you get to see everybody that you loved in heaven. Right? No hell. No, here. Oh, here. Oh, well, yes. You know, again, when we talk about the afterlife, when we talk about different levels of existence, for example, Jesus says you cannot say, look over here, look over there, here's the kingdom of heaven, right? Heaven exists, or hell exists in the current state that you're in. What's in the next realm cannot be fathomed by not just this mortal body, but even our heads. The Archbishop was saying when he stops to think about that, sometimes he get a headache. People have literally lost their mind trying to have a concept of what the afterlife is like. It's unfathomable. There are some things that just cannot register. I don't care about all the supercomputers that we have, all of the geniuses that we have. No one can fully articulate mathematically or otherwise certain components or aspects that are not for us at this time. And we have some folk who refuse to believe that. And the challenge there is in fact that they are not the creator. Many, many, many cultures believe that we are little gods. That concept is in Christianity, it's in all religions. Now, all religions may not tell you about it, or they may not emphasize it, particularly in Christianity. The other systems talk a whole lot more about it. That's why they have a different understanding and conduct themselves slightly differently and are not afraid of the next level of existence because they understand it's a continuum. When we talk about rites of passage in African cosmology, the last rite of passage is leaving the earth realm into the spirit realm. That's full graduation. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Other cultures talk about death because it's part of life. Ecclesiastes says there's a time to be born and a time to die. We're not talking about spirit. Spirit cannot die. Energy, spirit, and energy, they're synonymous. Can't die. Can't bend it, twist it, whatever. It just is. We'll go back to just isness. And if you try to go any further than that, you're going to have an aneurysm. There are some things that just cannot, they're not meant for human consumption. We can attempt to toy with it. We can attempt to try to understand it. We can get a glimpse of it, but you can't have the full disclosure until that time comes. All that's tied into understanding ancestral worship. It's not just this, oh, they're over there, oh, and they're praying for us. No, they still interact. Everyone in here has had an experience where they remember something that grandma or grandpa said that are no longer here. Or mom said, or big brother or auntie, or some family friend, or someone that you had regard for. You could almost hear their voice saying, don't do that, or good job, keep it up. You're not crazy. You haven't lost your mind. That spirit is communicating with you. And some people are uncomfortable with that. And they're uncomfortable because it's not talked about in Western civilization very much. And so therefore, if it's not a conversation that you're going to have at some point within your day or your week or your month, then you kind of shy away from it because you don't want to be isolated. Everybody wants to have some acceptance. I've had a variety of people ask me certain questions or share an experience that they have had, and I've said to them, yeah, that exists. Now, whether it's talked about commonly or not, that may be a different thing, but it exists. You know, anyway, when we close out tomorrow, I'll mention one or two more Asian cultures, and then I'll look at what Europe has done and still does as it relates to ancestral worship and veneration. We jumped a little bit ahead last night, so question for you. What is All Souls Day about? What do you do during All Souls? You remember the saints? No. Right. All souls is those family members who have passed. All saints is the saints. What is the Day of the Dead? This is what the Latinos or the Mexicans do. They remember their ancestors. All of this is tied around what? October 31st, Halloween, or All Hallows Eve, which Mother Stones was shaking her head because it is a demonic day. For those who are devil worshippers, for those who deal with the dark, that is a high holy day for them. The reason originally we dressed as ghosts and ghouls and goblins and all those kinds of things, it was later on that we did the pretend to be a princess or a king or whatever. No, you dressed as something that was dead, a skeleton or whatever. So when those evil spirits are walking the earth, they think you are one of them, and they do not harass or attempt to harm you. That was why we wore those ghoulish garb. That was the reason. But All Saints and All Souls Day are all around or right after what? Hallows Eve. And we're still talking about our ancestors. We're still talking about those in the spirit realm. Spirit realm is real. There are those that would discount it, but in fact, it's real. Well, a scientist said we can't really see the undead. Because your machine can't measure it, doesn't mean it don't exist. I'm shutting down just a couple seconds early to be a full last session. As always, God bless you in your travels. Thank you very much. Yes. All right.
It doesn't have anything to do with, well, it has something to do with All Hallows Eve. But where did the candy come in at?
To sanitize things. Well, the trick and the treat was this. If you got tricked, those tricks weren't pleasant. It got sanitized when someone would take toilet paper and throw it in someone's tree, or take soap and write it on the car window, right? Or throw some rotten eggs at a house or whatever the case may be. Those were the tricks. The treat was earlier on fruit. Then it became candy. Then when it became unsafe, you would take your kids to the mall. And you had a secure place for them to get candy, right? And the tricks don't get done at the mall. But the trick of the treat was one of the ways you sanitized it, was one of the ways that you tried to make it acceptable. But the tricks for real was your soul being taken by a deceiver. Mm-hmm. Yes. Remember, they were also putting LSD into fruit, and people were losing their minds that way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank y'all very much.